A few weeks ago today, I concluded the mini-series known as Villains Week here on the channel, which I call a mini-series because more so than anything it was a branch of my mainline series known as Listed. But speaking of lists, this video has not one, but two entire top 10 lists to call its own. Of course, there is no greater way to celebrate this anniversary of sorts to the conclusion of this mini-series known as Villains Week than with the Skylanders game that takes the greatest delve into its villains, that being Trap Team, where you hunted down the villains who escaped Cloudcracker Prison and captured their life essence in colourful crystals, as you see before you, to rehabilitate them and play as them to fight for Skylanders' cause. I know what you're thinking. Where is the motivation to play as these villains who were just performing evil acts across Skylands? Like, seriously? Why would you want to play with such an evildoer who was literally performing evil 5 seconds ago? Well, luckily for them, throughout the entirety of the game, each and every villain had the potential to complete a villain quest, which were scattered throughout the many levels in order to make up for the wrongdoings that they had partaked in. Naturally, just like the villains themselves, these quests differ highly in overall quality, and I have a lot of things to say about each and every one of them, but in this video more specifically we're going to be talking about 20 of them, 10 of the worst, and 10 on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, with them being some of the very best the game has to offer. And due to this, the video is going to be incredibly personality driven, and by personality driven I mean me blabbering on about who knows what for 30 minutes straight. Just seriously look at that time bar at the bottom right there. That just emphasises the personality that I'm going to be delivering in this, for the most part, completely unscripted video. This is about the 100th take of this here intro, so that's why this is just about the one and only part that was scripted in this here video, since I was basically fed up of constant takes after takes because I had to get this part perfect. Regardless, there is clearly no greater way to celebrate Sky 10 Mirth than with such a personality driven top 10 video to boot. Now, what's most important about a villain quest to me personally is for it to be themed specifically to the villain it's redeeming. If it feels out of place or misunderstands the character, then it doesn't feel like a redemption of that specific villain at all, and really only feels like additional side content to drag out the completion time of the game, because a lot of these villain quests are required for 100% completion. In fact, all of them are, but more specific ones have hats and stuff for collection stars. So whilst a lot of villain quests are optional, others are required to access different areas of the level and find specific collectibles, and that can be very infuriating, as we'll find out with the worst list, which is the one we are going to be starting with, because I want to end off this video on a high note. Naturally, going back to what would make a villain quest fantastic is not only the specific theme into the villain at hand, but also the design of the villain quest, allowing for some guidance, so that way you're not getting lost, you're not getting infuriated with the setting, as it gives you some intriguing visuals to diverse through and just naturally create something that's fun, fast-paced, and feels like a worthy distraction from a main game rather than an absolute drag to sit through. So naturally, the best and worst lists are going to distinguish both of these quite sharply on both ends of the spectrum, which is what's going to make it so interesting to compare and contrast these lists with, mind you. But regardless, I think this intro is getting long enough as is. It truly does emphasise the personality that this video is going to be displaying left, right and centre, and it's about time I played that intro before this phone winds up slipping out of my hands, because believe me, with the way it is positioned right now, it falling is practically inevitable. Coming in at number 10, we have Sheep Creep. Now, I can respect what this villain quest was attempting to do, because its gameplay is very unique to this specific villain quest, because we don't really see any other villain quest in the same style, at least when it comes to the ones that require some semblance of gameplay, you could say. But moving on from that, this gameplay isn't exactly original, neither in its concept nor its execution, because it's an exact rip-off of the Angry Birds game. Just replace the birds and the sheep with Sheep Creep and the buffalo, and that's exactly how this game is executed. And for gameplay style of this, that automatically takes away any sort of originality that the villain quest could have had, and distinguish it between the other villain quest, but it distinguishes itself all for wrong problems, because this gameplay is floaty, jank, and near uncontrollable, since whenever you aim somewhere and you try to hit it with the same amount of power, it seems as though Sheep Creep goes in the complete opposite direction. And it doesn't help that you can barely aim due to the sensitive controls, making it so that then, when you try to just nudge it left, you wind up flying off the screen. So the over floaty controls make this an absolute frustration fest to get through, and the lack of originality in the villain quest is just cherry on top of the cake to turn what could have been an original, distinguishable villain quest into something that just frustrates and enrages you, with said terrible controls and the lack of originality, with it being a clear Angry Birds ripoff. So that's why Sheep Creep is coming in as the 10th worst villain quest of the game. Number 9, we have Graveclobber. Now, what I hear about Graveclobber is for tight corridors, you can't really enact upon the power that his gameplay can provide for, because you often find yourself trying to interweave through the narrow corridors while utilising his attacks even more than anything. And not to mention, this is a labyrinth, so you find yourself lost and losing precious time, making it an awfully paced villain quest. On top of that, it's not really a great execution of his character either. It's got a slight Egyptian colour palette to it, and that's it, to say the least, despite the fact that Graveclobber should have had a more Egyptian-based, of course, villain quest, with his design taking heavy inspiration from that culture, him being mummy-esque in all. And I just hate the pacing here, because Graveclobber being slow and quite big and chunky, in of course a buff manner, is what makes it so unbearable to go through these long, tight corridors. They just feel barren and boring to traverse through, even due to the just generic and dull design of the level that doesn't match that of Graveclobber's design whatsoever. So ultimately, this villain quest is a disappointment both on the pacing and the lack of distinguishability from the other villain quest, with it being the exact same, just slower and more tedious. Next up, we have Wolfgang. Now, I've never really understood this villain quest, but he's supposed to use his music to attract orbs into a vacuum. It sounds weird in concept, and it's even weirder in execution, especially since the orbs never seem to actually follow your music, so it just becomes even more confusing, the fact that this level doesn't seem to take advantage of the gameplay mechanics and the concepts which it establishes at the very beginning of the villain quest. And not to mention the level itself, sure, it's Future of Skylanders, but as the level you capture Wolfgang in, it doesn't necessarily make it a great theming for the villain, because Wolfgang isn't all about the future. Sure, he's not about his music, but we've already mentioned about how that gameplay mechanic doesn't really work and doesn't really attract the orbs in the way how the developers obviously intended for it. So the fact that this is just a copy and paste area of the Future of Skylanders, not even the layout is unique, because it is literally just a copy and paste of the same portions of the level that you've just played through, because of course you access this villain quest through the Future of Skylanders, so that adds a lot more boredom to the backgrounds of actual level theme in itself, because we've seen it already executed in the stage leading up to this point. So naturally, this villain quest does not take advantage of the gameplay mechanics it establishes at the very beginning of the villain quest. It's got a very boring level theme into it that doesn't match that of Wolfgang, despite the fact that you fight Wolfgang in this setting, but the Future of Skylanders itself isn't really all that Wolfgang's character is about. It would make more sense for this exact theming to be done with a better execution of the mechanics in a musical-based setting like a concert, and instead we're left with this lazy excuse of a villain quest that's just blatantly shoehorned in to bloat out the runtime of the game, and because of that it's dull, it's boring, and I just don't really appreciate it all that much, which is why Wolfgang is coming in as the 8th worst villain quest of the game. Next up we have Ice Cream, who practically has the same problems as Graveclubber because she's slow, she goes to a very generic based location that isn't really themed to her all that well, so naturally she doesn't really feel like she fits as part of this villain quest, and it doesn't feel like this is unique to her. It's just blatantly shoehorned in once again to extend the runtime of the game and keep kids playing it for longer, you could say, to get them buying more toys, including that of a Dark Trap. So Ice Cream's villain quest just comes off as lazy and uninspired, and the worst thing about it is that Ice Cream is slow, so you want to gather up all the ghosts at once to be the most effective with your movement, but as soon as you're hit you lose all the ghosts and have to traverse back through the same portion of levels you've already played, or the same portion you've already played even, to be more specific on what I'm saying right here, because this constant cycle of repeating the exact same parts of a level that you've already been to gets so repetitive and dull after a while, unbelievably so, and because of that it makes the villain quest get very dull and very stale very quickly, and it becomes more frustrating to defeat or to beat even than anything else. Put an Ice Cream at number 7 on the worst villain quest list right here. Next up we have Taekwondo. Now, whilst this might be a character that I myself really love, his villain quest, however, I do not, because when it comes to Taekwondo's villain quest, it's a protection-based mission, which automatically makes it terrible, because it's slow. You have to just wait around and not really do all, because it's a very boring, generic setting that's very barren. There's not really much details for you to invest yourself into. You literally just stand around, throw a shuriken in one direction and throw a shuriken in another. But the fact of the matter is that this is a slow-paced, dull, dragged-out villain quest, and it could have been better too, with the fact that the bird peckers deal a lot of damage. That could create a lot of tension, but here's the thing, they die with one shuriken, so that doesn't make it difficult in the slightest, and it just makes it all more frustrating when you are foolish and manage to get yourself killed and have to start the whole process all over again, because what's worse than doing 4 phases? Having to do the 3 before it all over again. So for lack of challenge that the dodos created, or whatever the fuck these birds are, and the trouble that creates in terms of the pacing issues that arise because of it, is ultimately what makes Taekwondo's villain quest boring on a setting and theme level, as well as dull and dragged out on a pacing level. I can't emphasize this enough. I love the villain, hate the villain quest. Coming in at number 5 we have Dr. Crankcase, whose villain quest is more disappointing than bad, but really my main problem with this villain quest is the fact that this is a Doom Raider we're talking about here. I was about to say Doom Random, which I have no idea what the heck that is supposed to be. But as we digress right here, everyone's favourite phrase, it's such a shame that we have such an epic Doom Raider battle, and then after you've defeated him, you've captured him, and in the very next level his quest arises, you're so excited to just load up a level and see what exciting theming they have for this villain, and then you realise that all you do is use his goop gun to get rid of a wooden wall standing in your way of a collectible. That's it. That's all we get from an epic Doom Raider boss fight, from going out of our way to seek out a tech trap by capturing Dr. Crankcase, you could say, and then bringing him into the very next level. Our reward is a glorified cutscene. Sure, you can use this power later on in the level to discover even more secrets, and that's just a great way to encourage further exploration within the level, so to say, and that element of the villain quest I like, which is why it's only the 5th worst. But still, from such an epic Doom Raider on a design and a villain and a boss fight standpoint, I expect a bigger reward than just a glorified cutscene. So yes, the fact that there is so much potential to make a villain quest so well themed and with such fun gameplay due to Dr. Crankcase being a fun, fast-paced character, and yet them taking advantage of all of that, it's ultimately incredibly disappointing and really lets down Dr. Crankcase as a whole. Number 4 we have Tussle Sprout. Now Tussle Sprout once again is a glorified cutscene, but what happens at the end of this cutscene is that you grow yourself a little vine that's going to be able to give you access to a villain treasure chest. Now, this interaction with Arbo is pretty fun, and the two characters have some semblance of chemistry due to Arbo's charisma and energy that just oozes off of him. But unfortunately, that energy and liveliness is short-lived as you get to see the ugliness that is that bridge. It is gross, it is disgusting, and it honestly looks like it's a glitch. For lack of polish for design of this bridge even, for texturing, the animations, just all of it looking so disgusting, making me not even want to complete this villain quest and not even want the treasure chest, because to get it we have to go across the ugliest looking bridge I've ever seen. Is ultimately what makes what could have been a very satisfying moment within the Skylanders Trap Team game so disappointed and rooted in ugliness. So that's what makes Tussle Sprout's villain quest so damn disgusting and terrible to go alongside that. Number 3, we have Pinata. So now, not only do we have an escort mission to where we need to slowly follow an escort and then defeat a wave of enemies. Wow, how original. Yeah, for genericness and the lack of pacing, make this a very forgettable villain quest. And then worst of all, it breaks up the pace of the entire level, since it comes in halfway through the secret sewers of Supreme Stink. So you go from a fast-paced, puzzle-heavy platforming stage, that's one of my favorites in the game, to a slow-paced escort mission that's irritating for all your senses for the grand majority of its runtime. Sure, it looks visually pleasing, but when it comes to what you have to listen to during the entirety of the escort, you have high-pitched eels squealing down your ear as they perform their terrible singing. What torture to my ears. It would be fine if these damn lizards could shut up, but they can't, and that makes this villain quest absolute torture on a pacing level, a torture to my senses, as I put previously, especially my ears, that want nothing to do with this villain quest. And so because of that, I dread taking it on. And you know you've screwed up a villain quest when you've tarnished the level you're currently playing because of it, and you've made it so the players dread having to go through it for the sake of 100%, because you get a hat from this which makes it 100% compulsory in the completion of the level. It is beyond frustrating. So what do they have you do for the villain quest of the biggest villain throughout the entirety of the franchise, the main villain at that, Chaos himself? What do? You make a cake. Big deal. The main problem with this is literally the fact that it takes the most iconic, most popular villain within the entirety of the Skylanders franchise, and obviously he's popular because the developers wound up bringing him back for 6 years in a row, so even if he isn't popular for fans, he's most definitely popular for developers. But as I digress, they take the main villain of the entirety of the franchise and they give you a lame cutscene. This is how they reward you for beating Chaos, acquiring a Chaos Trap, which is the same recommended retail price as a regular trap, but for only one villain rather than several villains of the same element, and all of that is rewarded to you with a cake that doesn't even look all that good. In fact, the texture once again looks unfinished, unpolished, and because of that is rather ugly to look at and causes the same problems as that of Tussle Sprout's villain quest. I expect more from this, developers. Why be so lazy as to not give Chaos his very own themed villain quest and instead have him make you a cake? Pathetic. But without a doubt, my number one least favourite villain quest is the only villain in the quest, villain quest in the game even, that I despise. At the very least, Chaos's villain quest is over and done with in mere seconds. At the very least, Pinata's villain quest is somewhat themed to him and has some sort of pacing behind it and is fun to go through the combat and has good theming, especially on a visual standpoint. At least Tycoon Crow's villain quest has lighting behind it and some sort of physics engine. Well, I tell you what, Brawl And Chain has none of those. Brawl And Chain's villain quest just emphasises everything that's wrong with the villain quest preceding it. It has a lame, boring, dull, bland, empty feeling setting that does not match the theming of a character whatsoever. Brawl And Chain is so damn slow, so him slowly trekking through a barren area is so dull to the point where it's actually frustrating. I find myself wanting to rip my hair out every single time I play this villain quest because it's so slow paced. And worse yet, it's repetitive because you have to go through the same sections of the stage several times, all with a lack of lighting that doesn't create any sort of imagery whatsoever. It just takes away from any sort of visual investment you could have in going slow. So naturally, I despise this villain quest to the point to where when it pops up in Telescoped House, I just don't want to do it. And when I have to do it for a 100% run, like what you're seeing before you, I dread it every single time. There is no words to express my hatred for this villain quest in its pacing, in its boredom, in its frustration for it just being so poorly designed and just so lazily shoehorned in for the sake of padding out the runtime of the video game. Whew. If I talk about this villain quest anymore, I'm going to wind up blowing up my own head with frustration, so we are, without further ado, going to head on to the best list so we can talk about some good villain quests without further ado. Ones with good pacing, with hilarious cutscenes, with theming to match their characters, and just genuinely something to love playing through and to feel rewarded, and, you know, best of all, with the best villain quests, ones that you look forward to playing, unlike these pieces of crap, which once the moment they're over and done with, I cannot wait to put them behind me and hope to never play them ever again. So here we go with the start of the best list, and that's going to be beginning with none other than Shield Striker, Shredder, my bad. That's what we get for having two very similar names when it comes to these characters within Skylanders, despite the fact that the Shield Striker is clearly not a character because, you know, it's a car. But as I digress, everyone's favourite phrase once again, when it comes to Shield Shredder's villain quest, what I love about this is that it's short, it's snappy, it's at the very beginning of the level, so if needs be, you forgot to trap Shield Shredder, no big deal, you just exit out of it, go back to the academy, grab put him within a life trap, mind you, head straight back into the level, and all you've had to do is wait through 2 cutscenes, or 2 loading screens even in the process. And this cutscene is very rewarding too. It's themed to Shield Shredder because he seems to like his music, and that's exactly what he's creating in this cutscene music. It's sweet, it's heartwarming, and it truly is a redemption for this villain, as you have wonderful additions made to your senses for, because of this cutscene. You get epic music. If only this was the music playing during Pinata's villain quest, maybe then it would have been more tolerable. Coming in at number 9, we have Lob-Goblin. Now, what I love about Lob-Goblin's villain quest is that it's not only themed to him, but it's themed to the entirety of the species, that being trolls. And so that adds, you know, a further investment in Skylanders as you learn a lot about the species through the interactions that Lob-Goblin has with the person who sets the quest up for him. Since Lob-Goblin is the only troll that can count past 7, so that is both hilarious and gives us some sort of lore behind the trolls, knowing that they are so dumb in fact that they can't even count past 7, mind you. So it's themed to the entirety of trolls. It makes Lob-Goblin the smartest troll of all of them, adding to his character on top of it, and is an hilarious interaction, so what's not to love about Lob-Goblin's villain quest? So the area itself for Hoodsickle's villain quest might seem a little generic because it's just your copy and pasted you know, jungle type level, the exact same level design as what Gulper had for his villain quest, but the difference here is that you're not constantly going around the same parts of the stage with the same visuals, constantly repeating themselves over and over to make it feel boring and dragged out and frustrating, because instead what you're doing is you're dashing through the level with great speed, and you feel a great sense of power as well, because Hoodsickle has his attack where he swipes his scythe, which is a 500 hit damage, and then all of the ghosts around him explode, causing further damage. So you constantly feel powerful and at great pace when, you know, attempting this villain quest, so that automatically makes it fun in and of itself. Putting Hoodsickle at my number 8 favourite villain quest right here. Coming in at number 7, we have the complete opposite of Type 1 Crow, where we have a villain that I'm not a huge fan of, but it turns out that this villain is an absolute living legend. Do you know the health implications that can be created from you holding in your Wii? You know what kind of serious damage that can do to one's bladder and what long-term physical effects that can have on one's body? Well, this poor Marbu right here can't really do anything about it. He can't, you know, free himself of the internal pain, because believe me, holding in weave that long is an extremely painful task to go through due to, like I was previously alluding to, the pressure on your bladder. So naturally, fisticuffs coming along and bringing the outhouse towards Marbu has truly saved his bladder, along with his health, his pain, his pressure, and above all, it has made fisticuffs an absolute living legend, because not only has he helped maintain this Marbu's health, but he has saved the future of the village, because now anybody else who needs to utilise the outhouse for their business, shall we put it, can just waltz wide up and relieve themselves, purge themselves, you could even say. I know it seems pretty gross, but that just kind of adds to the comedic flair and the atmosphere of the villain quest right here. Fisticuffs, one absolute living legend. He didn't need to come all the way out to Monster Marsh just to help this guy's poor bladder out and maintain his health into the future. But he went on ahead and did it anyway. If that's not redemption, I don't know what is. Anyways, I suppose that makes me a hypocrite now, because I spend the majority of the time on this channel absolutely bellyaching about toilet humour, and here I am utilising it myself for an entire point on this top 10 video, mind you, so you don't get much more hypocritical than that. You gotta love that quote-unquote personality of mine. Number 6, we have Crosscrow. Now, I love the fact that the developers had a pun in mind and they decided to make an entire villain quest theme around that pun. And it's quite hilarious how it's a pun about the biggest fans in Skylanders. And, you know, fans, they create a whirly motion with such great speed that it creates gusts of wind. And that's quite hilarious, because Crosscrow is a water character, not an air character. You'd think an air character would have this honour, since it's a rather air-themed villain quest. But here's the thing, Crosscrow can just randomly summon other crows from the air and make him swing down at enemies. Now, that's a very air-inspired attack, so naturally Crosscrow kind of feels like a hybrid between the two elements, and so the utilisation of elements is what makes this villain quest so perfectly themed to Crosscrow. There is no better villain who could have got this villain quest due to this incredible theming that they have managed to establish with this character. And once again, Crosscrow has more than redeemed himself with this villain quest, because he has saved the biggest fans of Skylands. Something very important to the future survival of fellow Skylanders, or Landers of the Sky, I should say, like Marbu and all of the other residents that the Skylanders so desperately try to protect from the wrath of chaos and, you know, Crosscrow's fellow Cloudcracker escapees, so to say. So yes, Crosscrow's villain quest is fast-paced, it's wide, it's open, so that makes it fun to explore. It never feels repetitive in the slightest, it's well-themed, and overall just a lot of fun to tackle. Number 5, we have Chef Pepperjack, which is a really fast theme level, which more than themes itself to Chef Pepperjack, because he's a chef, so naturally him going around gathering cheeses from a crazy tiki head of all things is a weird concept that is executed to perfection in the theme of Chef Pepperjack, because him being such an expert at cooking with cheese sounds, you know, exactly like the thing Chef Pepperjack would be good at. And better yet, he's not even grabbing the cheese for himself, he's doing it on behalf of a fellow chef, showing that he has loyalty to people of his profession despite being a villain, and it creates the great redemption arc for the character. And it really rewards you for picking up that fire trap and capturing Chef Pepperjack, since it's fast paced, so even if you don't like it much, it's over and done with very, very quickly. The halls are tight and there's constant urgency, since the, of course, Tiki Head can consume time rather than health from your villain, so naturally you're constantly trying to evade him and grab the cheeses at great speeds. The constant sense of urgency keeps you constantly invested and concentrated on the level, and that's what keeps the pacing so fast, as I alluded to earlier. Next up, we have Threat Pack at number 4, just shy of a bronze medal. Now, what I love about Threat Pack's villain quest is that short as a cutscene of all things. but it opens up bonus content throughout the level because Threat Pack uses his intelligence to upgrade the turret's power by giving you rockets. This gives you incentive to play as this villain throughout the entirety of the level and to actually swap to him in the cannons, taking advantage even of the swapping mechanic in the game, or at least the tag team mechanic I should say, to be more specific. Otherwise I'll be reminding you of the swap force, which is not what we're here to talk about today. Regardless, time to move on with my lack of script in front of me and talk about the fact that this is a themed villain quest, because as I was alluding to before even, it takes advantage of Threat Pack's intelligence and it truly rewards you for picking up that water trap and capturing Threat Pack with it, and it gives Threat Pack a sweet new evolved form. So all the same, for real sense of reward and for speed and pacing of this villain quest, with it literally only being that of a cutscene, is ultimately what makes it such a satisfying find and such a satisfying thing for you to accomplish, mind you. Coming in at number 3, receiving our bronze medal, is none other than Rage Mage. Now, what I love about Rage Mage's quest is that he's an ice cream salesman of all things. So, whilst it's not necessarily theming to his character, because ice cream is the complete opposite of Rage, it makes up for that with the animations that Rage Mage creates. The fact that he twirls around the sign, the ice cream sign, and that's what sells the ice cream 10,000 years in the future. It's just such a hilarious concept executed to pure and utter perfection. It was building up Rage Mage's villain quest. We captured him in chapter 10 and didn't get to see it fulfilled until chapter 13 even, and they morphed and delivered. And speaking of delivering, this villain quest allows ice cream to be delivered back into the past, allowing for you to get additional health bonuses throughout the next few levels in the game. That is so useful, especially when you're running really low and need that food more than anything, such as it being placed right before Golden Queen's boss fight, for example. So this has long-term impacts on your gameplay. It can really save you in a tough situation, and it's just a really fun animation to watch unfold before you, with a really great build-up and just a joke that really lands, making Rage Mage's villain quest beyond satisfying, beyond even words you could even say. Number 2, receiving our silver medal, is Chomp Chest. Now, the first thing that makes this guy's villain quest awesome is the fact that beforehand you get to speak to Flam Bam, one of the coolest NPCs in the history of Skylanders, and I know Crypt Crusher would absolutely be agreeing with me on that point. But as I digress, everyone's favourite phrase once again, can't possibly get enough of that, can you? What makes Chomp Chest villain quest so good is the fact that it has guidance, it has direction, literally, because the hot dogs spawn even, I've never heard of a spawn before, but regardless, they spawn right in front of you, and it's a really tight timer, so if you miss a hot dog and have to go back, that's going to really hinder your performance to complete this villain quest successfully. So with that constant urgency, you're constantly invested and concentrating in the villain quest, and you're never really repeating yourself in terms of the visuals, because you never need to loop around the same area twice. And overall, it's this sense of direction and urgency which makes Chomp Chest's villain quest very, very fast-paced, and it's constantly entertaining as you're constantly hearing Flam Bam's magnificent tone being heard throughout the entirety of the villain quest as you chomp down on hot dogs, which is incredibly themed to Chomp Chest because chomp is literally in the name. This villain quest is so close to perfection and can only be rivaled by one. That one being I5. I love the fact that I5 has to go into someone's dream, because I5 seems kind of like a dream type character to begin with the fact that his eyes are located in his hands of all things. It just seems like a character that the developers just had a really strange and wacky dream about, and then went to their boss, and the boss wound up approving character or approving design even to be put into the game. That just seems like how such a strange and wacky design even got thought up in the first place. So, you know, I5's villain quest being so weird and strange makes it feel so themed to his character, and the best thing about this theming is that it takes full advantage of the gameplay of I5, because of course the more you pound, the faster the character goes at the sacrifice of maneuverability, but that's fine because you have tight, packed corners, and corridors which cram enemies all around you with the purpose of beating them down, smashing up, earning points, and creating for amazing pace. And you also get some traps and gadgets to utilize, which are well designed in and of itself. So the fact that this is a game show about beating up as many enemies as fast as possible is unbelievably fun and so fast paced. I love i5's Villain Quest, and I look forward to playing it every single time I enter chapter 6 of this game. In fact, sometimes when I even don't need to perform this Villain Quest, I do it anyway because I just have so much fun going through, pounding all enemies in my wake, feeling that sense of destruction thanks to the sound effects being added in as, of course, i5's pounds become faster and faster, stronger and stronger. So ultimately, i5 is my favourite villain quest in this game for those very reasons, and he is the one villain quest that I will never, ever say no to playing. So just like that, this very, very long video is finally coming to an end. So let me know in the comment section below how wrong I was with my opinions that I discussed for half an hour straight with all of you. And one thing I didn't actually realise about this video when I recorded the intro is that it's the final top 10 for Skylanders, so I sure hope you guys enjoyed it for that very reason, for it bringing a conclusion to the top 10s within the month of Skylanders. But enough of my blabbering on, I did plenty of that when I was, justifying my opinions on these villain quests, so I'm going to conclude the video here. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll be seeing you in the next top 10, and until the moment arises, peace.